I wasn't there at the absolute beginning. I'm old, not eternal. The pantheon remembers, those of us who still gather behind the veil. And the conclave ends and the Sheba has retired to her chambers. We share a bottle of something that tastes like distilled starlight, and we tell the old stories. Ogun insists on the same brand, says it reminds him of the first meteorite he ever smelted. Anubis drinks in silence, watches the door, because old habits are the last thing to die. Shango drinks too much and challenges Walk to arm wrestling contests that have been going on for roughly 6,000 years now. Legba plays cards, was set to pass the time. Mujaji drinks very little, but loudly gossips about what the mortals have done next to Tanit and Oya, with a smile. And sometimes, on very rare occasions, we're joined by High John the Conqueror, who doesn't drink, but sits with us and listens. They say the silence before the first note was not empty, it was pregnant. Every possibility that ever would be, every future that ever could unfold, every story I would ever steal or tell, all of it was already there, waiting in the dark like a held breath. And then ZAIROO stepped through. Not appeared, not woke, stepped, as if they had been walking for a very long time through a place that was not a place, and the silent plane of reality was simply the next room. The moment their foot touched the void, a hum rippled outward. ZAIROO heard it. They began to nod their heads slowly, rhythmically, and those nods coalesced into Nana, the pulse of beginning. Imagine the first heartbeat of the universe, and then imagine that heartbeat realizing it was alive. That was Nana. ZAIROO kept seeking the source of the hum. They lifted their hands and conducted the unseen waves. That conducting spun the hum into Tanoa, the twin-spirited, Tenor, the striving that conquers, Naomi, the shielding that protects. Two faces of the same impulse, because every fight is also the defense of something. Then ZAIROO stomped, the quakes became Vulani, the pillar of earth, and Quadwo, the pillar of sky. Vulani is the ground that steadies, the rain that feeds the farmer, the stone that never swerves. Quadwo is the canopy above, the law the stars obey, the cold, precise beauty of order. They are opposites, and they have been arguing ever since. Finally, ZAIROO hummed a harmony that wove through everything else. That harmony crystallized into Assyria, the voice of the firmament, the threshold, the door that never closes. She is the silence after the last note, and she is the reason that silence matters. Without her, death is just noise. With her, it's a chord change. These were the five. ZAIROO danced life into the world, and then they stepped back and let the five sing. The first Echo Quintet. That song seized ZAIROO and ignited the mesmerizing variance, a dance so powerful it shook the newborn universe into complexity. Gravity, time, space, fast, slow. They are the sweat of a dancing god. The stars are droplets. The planets are the places where the sweat pooled and cooled. And from the residue, from the chaos of the dance, we emerged. The pantheon, hundreds of thousands of minor gods. Me, I came from the spaces between, the margins, the places where one note almost becomes another, but doesn't. I was a story before I was a god. Oya came from storms, Ogun from the flaming heart of a star, Anubis from the threshold between life and death. He and Assyria have a complicated relationship. Don't ask, don't ask. We looked upon the fresh creation and we felt it. Beyond the edges, something moving, counter to the dance. So we spoke the first prayer ever uttered. We want to protect. The five heard us. They sang the Great Eden Quintet. ZAIROO came running then. They shaped the young planet Ardi with stomps, the harmonic boom. Each beat sank into the bedrock and stayed there. Tanoa hurled meteorites into the oceans. Two continents rose. Thayum, the gentle land of rivers, and Nok, red soil and iron stone, holding the deepest pool of ZAIROO's rhythm. That red soil was the cradle. Humanity rose from it, born of red earth. Assyria's first reign, and ZAIROO's exhaled breath. They stood up already dancing. Fulani set 2 suns in the sky, Quadro made 3 moons, Assyria gave them souls, and the dead rose as ancestors. Nana wove the sky into shape and pulled oceans from the clouds. Then ZAIROO left to dance forever, and we got to work. For 2,000 years, we the gods spoiled them rotten. Cloud cities, honey rivers, if you tripped, a god caught you. And then, the humans got bored. Or restless, or curious, you know the story. They asked why they died. We told them. Reality didn't intend it. They asked, then, if their purpose was to die. We said no. The humans then asked for a reason to live, and we realized they needed discord as much as they needed us. So the 5 scooped ZAIROO's shadow into the bowl of Wenzaki, and a ripple spread when they did, a crack in a song that we all felt and foolishly ignored, and they poured it over a new continent, ZAIROO, the land of monsters. And then the 5 greater gods left to explore other realities, and we were alone, the pantheon, with what we had made. The age of heroes followed. Shaka Zulu, Windo, Ramses, Queen Mozadaji, legends I watched rise and fall. All 3 continents united under one royal family, the Sundiatas. It was a golden age, and like all golden ages, it was rotting from within. The ripple from the bowl of Wenzaki had awakened something. Kotaku, discord incarnate. Not evil, just a counter-rhythm. The shadow's consciousness. Thing that moves against the dance because that is its nature. It sent ripples of its own across reality. One of them found King Sundiata, the 46, the sunderer. The most brilliant mind of his age, and the most dangerous. The ripple whispered to him, and he thought the whisper was his own genius. Why do the ancestors not command the wind? Why can't humanity rule the gods? Our theology was clear. Ancestors guide, they do not rule. To rule the wind is to rule a god. It is impossible, and it is wrong. Sundiata didn't care. He demanded power. We granted humanity magic to appease him. A mistake. He used it to build a ritual that would bind thousands of ancestors into the divine regalia, a crown of stolen souls that would make him a god, or so he thought. His chief priest Talit tried to stop him. The ancestors are not cattle, she said. You cannot yoke them. He silenced her and he pressed on. This is where I entered the story properly. All the gods of Future Sight received the same vision at once. Gods and mortals dying in numbers we couldn't count. But the source was a void, a nothing. We couldn't see it. So we gathered in Fam, the capital, and argued for days. And then I figured it out. If it were from another dimension, we would see it. If it were in the future, we would see it. So it's not from another dimension, and it's not from the future. It's from the edges, the margins. Everything has an edge. I looked at the council. This is an encroachment. The moment I named it, the blind spot cleared. The capital, ground zero. The one place we thought was safest. I ran to Aso. Goddess I loved. A concept I always have found amusing. Before her. But now, it was the only thing that mattered. My vision had shown her death. I begged her to flee with me. She asked me the 2 outcomes. I hesitated because I knew, but I couldn't lie to her. If she fled with me, 50 million mortals would perish. If she stayed and fought, only. Holding my hand, she said she would stay. I took off my mask and wept. At that moment, the gods of Future Sight finally narrowed the threat's origin to the Sunder's palace itself. I was still preparing to leave, but also used the window to fly towards Fam with the other gods who had chosen to stay and protect as many humans as possible. Because gods can be in many places at once, a duplicate of Aso flew beside me as I retreated, speaking to me, while her other self hurtled towards the Sunder's ritual site. She told me she loved humanity, but she still loved me. but she could never live with herself knowing she had abandoned the people she was made to help in her most desperate moment. I told her I knew. We just never thought us gods could experience what mortals do. She held my hands and told me that every story, no matter how beautiful, had an ending. What was death to a god anyways? The sundering had already begun. On the appointed night, Sundiata's ritual ignited. The screams and wails of the ancestors tore through reality's song. The sky bleached white with light. ZAIROO's arrival looked like a ska painting come to life. Warped, eldritch light streams cracking through the world, out of focus and unnerving. The margins of reality splitting open. Gods who got too close to emerging fragments experienced instant destruction or evaporation. Also, the version beside me asked me to tell her a story. She was scared. The Aso flying into battle stood firm, shouting orders, brave. But the Aso beside me admitted her fear. So I told her stories to distract her. She asked me about the path where she stayed with me, the future where she fled, and we survived. I told her we'd survive, and eventually the danger would be defeated. But there was something else, another danger, another encroachment, something we couldn't see. And in that timeline, I lose my legs, unable to spin my web or steal a story, and also had to care for me. Our children, humanity, start fighting, endless war. And then another encroachment comes. The world becomes swallowed by ice, and all of humanity dies. Also looked at me, stunned, and asked me what happened if she stayed and died. I looked up at her and said, I have my legs. I unify the humans, and we save the day and create stories for eternity. Also looked at me, the same stalwart look as she headed into horrific danger, certain she was about to die, had the same confidence and understanding that she gave to me right now. Both copies, now in unison. And she told me that was the most beautiful story I ever heard in Nancy. And she asked me, please, keep finding more. And at that moment, the ritual's explosion annihilated the palace and ruptured the continent of Fam. The blast obliterated pantheon, ancestor, and human alike within its radius. Instead of a crown, the ritual ripped a hole in reality, the first rift. And through it stepped the ZAIROO, death personified. 21,900 meters of negation born from reality of dark matter and nourished by the despair of dying dimensions. The ancestors were sealed forever, their guidance lost, the sky bruised, the oceans boiled. To look at him directly was to feel your own death happen in slow motion behind your eyes. ZAIROO's emergence, my beloved Awesome. The sundering blast erased her name, her face, every trace of her presence in the world. Tears streamed down my eyes as I put my mask back on. I wept away from the destruction, and I joined the other gods and prepared humanity for war. That was only the beginning. First encroachment would last 400 years. It would kill 800 million souls. It would shatter the continent of Nok and scatter its red soil across the globe. It would end with ZAIROO's destruction and immediately spawn the long night under Gebele, darkness personified. But in that moment, swinging through the debris of a murdered continent, all I knew was that she was gone. And I had promised her I would keep finding beautiful stories. Welcome to ZAIROO.